Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we should be back now. Let's just check that. I just decided to start a new stream. Partially because the content was shit, anyways. It was just me fumbling around with technology. And partially because it just wasn't working. So I turned down my bit rate. So hopefully it'll work now. Because it would kind of suck if I went through all that and then it doesn't. So just give me a second. Let me reshare this. I don't like bit rates. I can never figure out because like the bit rate that is recommended is so much higher than what my internet would support. I don't really understand why it's even is recommended. Maybe internet just sucks in Canada. I mean, that's definitely a very strong possibility. There we go. Okay. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we got this. We got this by the ass. Let's get started. Okay. So, after massive technical difficulties, we'll get started with today's show. Let me just put the links for the stories that we're looking at today in the description. If you want to check any of them out, be my guest. As always, I don't really use Russian sources. I try to use Western sources as much as possible. So that being said, let's go. Let's go. So, so this is Macron has decided that Brandon is not like he's not doing it anymore. He's Johnson is stopping him. McConnell's a useless turtle. So Boris Johnson is like I don't know. He fucked off back to wherever to London. Rishi Sunak is Rishi Sunak. So Macron's gonna lead. He's gonna be the new Napoleon. He's going to be Emmanuel Macron, and he's going to assemble the Avengers. So this is Macron's like big plan. Is he's going to get the Avengers together. They're going to go into Ukraine and they're going to drive Russia out. It's going to be like the end of well, it's like the collab film in the Ukraine cinematic universe. French President Emmanuel Macron opened the door on Monday to European troops sending nations to Ukraine, although he cautioned there was no consensus at this stage, as allies agreed to ramp up efforts to give more munitions to Kiev. Some 20 European leaders gathered in Paris on Monday. There is no consensus at this stage to send troops on the ground. Nothing should be excluded. We will do everything that we must so that Russia does not win. Um, a White House official told Reuters that the United States has no plans to send troops to fight in Ukraine and that there were no plans to send NATO troops to fight in Ukraine. um, okay, so Macron had this emergency meeting. After some initial successes, Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico, who has opposed military aid to Ukraine, said several NATO and EU members were considering sending soldiers to Ukraine on a bilateral basis. I can confirm that there are countries that are prepared to send their own troops to Ukraine. There are countries that say never, among which Slovakia belongs. And there are countries that say this proposal must be considered. Um, so, when asked about this, Macron stated many people who say never, never today were the same people who said never tanks, never planes, never long range missiles 2 years ago. Let us have the humility to note that we have often been 6 to 12 months late. This was the objective of this evening's discussion. Everything is possible if it is useful to achieve our objective. Um, he said, adding that Europe should not depend upon the United States to fight in Ukraine. What are you going to do, Macron? Let's see. We'll get to the Lord of War thing. They're talking about that there. Um, So yeah, so he was calling kind of directly or indirectly for this coalition of for the new coalition of the willing, for the guys to get together, for the Avengers to avenge Ukraine against Russia. Let's see here. Uh, let's see. Okay. Uh, French President Emmanuel Macron wanted to create strategic ambiguity. That's good in a war between nuclear powers, strategic ambiguity. By openly discussing the idea of sending Western troops to Ukraine, but he was so ambiguous that he sparked confusion and irritation among some allies. We'll get to that in a second, Constantine. Macron's comments at a late night news conference after he hosted a meeting of Western leaders to rally support for Ukraine fitted with his reputation as a diplomatic disruptor who likes to break taboos and challenge conventional thinking. I mean, Macron is like the living embodiment of the soy boy. Like, is there anyone who's more of a soy boy, like, who's more of a new man than Macron? Like, oh. Let us not forget the woman Macron married. Yeah, Macron's wife, who is a teacher who groomed him, and he married her. She's like 30 years older than him, and he adopted her kids. Yeah, so this is Macron. And Macron's not even like a bad looking guy, and he's rich and famous, and you'd think he could do better, but no, that's just the way he is. Let's see. His comments may turn out to prescient and pave the way for greater direct Western involvement in the war in Ukraine against Russia's invasion sometime down the line. The Kremlin said that a move would make a direct conflict between NATO and Russia an inevitability. French officials were sent out to explain that Macron had wanted to stimulate debate and that ideas under discussion involved non combat troops and roles such as demining border protection or training Ukrainian forces. Just protecting the Ukrainian border with Russia. I mean, that's what it is. Okay, so there we go. So this happened, then immediately, Russia relishes NATO disarray after hasty denials of plan to deploy ground troops to Ukraine. It's over before it began. Russia appears to be relishing the gaffe French President Emmanuel Macron made this week and suggesting NATO countries discuss the possibility of Western ground troops being deployed in Ukraine, saying such an eventuality cannot be ruled out. Macron's suggestion was widely and very publicly rejected by NATO countries, including but not limited to the United States, Germany, UK, Spain, Poland, and the Secretary General. So literally, like, everybody immediately just said no. Like, all the countries that actually matter in NATO said no, basically immediately. So it's the Kremlin. Let's see here. I love Dmitry Medvedev. What is Dmitry Medvedev just basically just trolls constantly. That's kind of his role in life. Suffered a bout of verbal incontinence. Loud statements horrified the residents of his country and the leaders of a number of European states. Macron will spark World War III. He referenced Napoleon. France humiliated Macron. So Macron wanted to form this like intercoalition of Avengers to go and save the UCU. But everybody basically just shit on him, and it was a complete failure. And Macron was humiliated for not the first and certainly not the last time in his life. We will get to the snakening in a minute. So, Washington Post, however, I don't know if this is a snakening or not. It's hard to tell who's snaking who at this point in time. Let's see. Oh, okay, speed reader. No, wait. Okay. Okay, this looks fine. Uh, okay, give me a second. I'm gonna switch over to the screen reader for this one. I'm sorry, it's just it's my I get tired if I read too long. Okay, let me just swap this over to my screen reader. Here we go. Okay, so this article came out the day after Macron made his erudite Apollonian uh, Jovian statement. Washington Post, Democracy Dies in Darkness. Foreign troops in Ukraine, they're already there. Let me know if the audio balance is okay, by the way.
Nothing should.
Okay, let me just, that should be 120.
Nothing should be ruled out, French President Emmanuel Macron said in comments that triggered a mini continental uproar. Macron was briefing reporters on the sidelines of a Monday meeting with 25 European leaders in Paris on their continued support for Ukraine as it resists Russia's invasion. Kyiv has suffered recent battlefield setbacks as it grapples with shortages in munitions and workforce. Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico.
Okay, or I'll try reading this. It's not the best. Whose views are more sympathetic to the Kremlin than many of his peers had earlier suggested that there were European countries prepared to send their own troops.
Officials from the United States, Germany, Poland, Spain, the Czech Republic and a number of other NATO countries all dismissed the suggestion that they were considering sending troops. But Macron chose strategic ambiguity and stressed the importance of not allowing Russia to win the war. I remind you that 2 years ago, many around this table were saying, "We're going to offer sleeping bags and helmets," he told reporters at the Paris meeting. Today they're saying, "We've got to go faster and harder to get."
Okay, so that's not working too great.
Kremlin authorities seized on Macron's remarks, arguing that NATO troops in Ukraine would prefigure a direct armed confrontation with Russia. In this case, we would need to talk not about its likelihood, but about its inevitability, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said, referring to the prospect of a wider war. Russian President Vladimir Putin still casts the conflict as a proxy battle with the West that Moscow claims is propping up Kyiv. But Western governments have been at pains to maintain a plausible distance from the war, no matter their robust support for Ukraine's defense. Leaked documents last year confirmed that some NATO countries, including the United States, Britain and France, had deployed small numbers of special forces and military advisors to Ukraine in unspecified roles probably related to logistical support work and training. The United States CIA has
Okay, so yeah, small numbers of special for 100%. Those special forces are just for training. They're just there for logistics and training. They aren't there for anything else. We'll get to this other article in a bit. The United States and CIA had funded and partially equipped a sprawling network of spy bases across Ukraine that aid Kiev's efforts to track Russian troop movements and target the Kremlin's prized military assets. So, like, I don't even know who's snaking who at this point in time. To be honest, like, is this Ukraine snaking Europe? Is this Europe snaking Ukraine? Is this the Americans snaking Ukraine? I don't know, but we'll just keep going. The deeper reality of the war in Ukraine is that there are already plenty of foreign fighters on both sides. After Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine, notice that in every single article they always say full-scale invasion. Every single time, and it gets really obnoxious. 2 years ago, thousands of sympathetic volunteers, largely from the West and post-Soviet states, enlisted under Kiev's banner. The International Legion that emerged has been deployed across the front lines and in some of the war's most grinding battles. It comprises okay. Sorry.
It comprises a motley cast of ideological diehards, grizzled warriors and mercenaries for hire. Some have earned social media fame for their impassioned dispatches from the war zone. At least 50 American citizens, the majority former U.S. military veterans, have been killed in Ukraine. Advertisement. Though official numbers are a bit murky, some 20,000 foreigners from over 50 nationalities make up Ukraine's international legion, according to Ukrainian officials. Last week, amid mounting concerns over troop shortages, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky issued a decree allowing foreign nationals legally residing in the country to enter the National Guard, the military branch of the Ukraine's interior minister.
Okay, so here's the thing, and we're just gonna take a. I was gonna talk about this earlier, but we're just taking a slight field trip. So, according to Zelensky, let's see, Zelensky. I actually don't know how why do they even need I don't get why Ukraine has manpower problems. Um Only 31,000 Ukrainians have died. So Ukraine over a 2 year plus period. So I don't understand why Ukraine has a manpower problem because they've taken like very few casualties over the course of this. Um, it's very few. The U.S.'s estimate from last year, which many people think was low, was 70,000. That's not true though. I think he claimed 145,000 Russians had died. Here we go. Russia has lost a staggering 87% of its active duty ground troops it had prior to the invasion. That's 100% correct. 100% it's 31,000. Okay, if it was 31,000, they wouldn't need additional. They wouldn't we wouldn't be talking about conscription. We wouldn't be talking about this stuff. Like it's even America doesn't believe that with their bullshit numbers. So yeah. Just so I just want to say that Zelensky is yeah. It's just a fucking joke. Okay, let's see here. Let's get back to this.
Minister. He also proposed legislation last month making it easier for foreign nationals defending Ukraine to receive citizenship. Other volunteer brigades fighting for Ukraine include detachments of Belarusian fighters opposed to the Putin-backed dictatorship in Minsk, anti-Kremlin Russians and ethnically Turkic nationals from Russia, and post-Soviet states like Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan share this.
So basically just whoever the CIA, like whatever degenerates or children of oligarchs who were mad at Putin that the U.S. Recruited through the Natural Endowment for Democracy.
Russia, despite a massive demographic advantage, has faced its own workforce challenges over the course of the conflict. Its waves of mobilization pooled in unprepared conscripts from far-flung regions of the country and hardened convicts from its jails. Infamously, soldiers from the Wagner Organization, a state-backed mercenary company, participated.
No, I mean that's not true. Like Russia has been generally speaking taking time to train its soldiers. I mean, do we have to bring up this article again? Like I might as well because people from time to time say I'm like a Russian shill or whatever. Let's see, BBC. Okay, here we go. Okay. Once again, we have this article from the BBC. These teenagers at war with only 3 days training. 3 days of basic training before being sent into war. So that's, yeah. Once again, there's Russian human wave tactics. Also, I don't get what they mean by work. Do they mean workforce or manpower challenge? Or is workforce the politically correct way of saying manpower? Now, Russia is actually having a workforce shortage. The thing is that war, especially um, the kind of war like an industrial war, makes the economy just go crazy. It's like throwing a side of ham in with a bunch of piranhas. Just because the government's spending all this money, people are joining the army, they're getting paid, they're spending their money or sending it to their family. It's kind of like a Keynesian wet dream. And Russia has been ramping up its production. It's also had to start producing things domestically that it can't import anymore. So Russia has been having a major labor shortage. They might have to start taking in more guest workers from Iran and Central Asia.
Last month, Putin issued a decree fast-tracking citizenship for foreign nationals who signed military contracts to fight in a special military operation in Ukraine. Russian authorities have allegedly carried out police raids on Central Asian migrant homes in various cities, where those detained are sometimes pressured to enlist, according to the Associated Press. With Russian economy far from collapse, U.S. opts for tougher punishment. Russia has reached out much further afield to boost its ranks. Nationals from Syria, Cuba, Nepal and India have all reportedly been deployed on the Russian side of the war. Some of these people were duped by human traffickers. Others joined the war out of sheer desperation to help their families make ends meet.
That's notice that none of these people legitimately supported Russia. None of them. It was either human traffickers. It was either human traffickers or Russia like went to really poor people and got them to join. It's not as if these countries are all allies of Russia. I don't know how close Nepal is, but Syria is a close ally of Russia. Cuba is. Russia and India have been best friends basically since India's been a country. So obviously, there's going to be people from these countries who are favorable to Russia, kind of like how there's Poles who are favorable to Ukraine and went to fight there.
A number of recent stories chart the tangled, tragic global fault lines of the war. Reuters traced the journeys of Cubans from Havana's depressed environs who encountered recruiters on social media, and then left for Russia and later Ukraine. The Nepali government has asked Russia to send back hundreds of Nepali nationals recruited to fight for them in the war. According to officials in Kathmandu, more than 200 Nepalis have gone to Ukraine's battlefields and at least 14 have been killed, while a number of others are in Ukrainian custody. I didn't join the Russian military for pleasure. I didn't have any job opportunities in Nepal, Ramchandra Kadka, 37, who returned to Nepal after sustaining injuries in Ukraine, told CNN. But in hindsight, it wasn't the right decision. We didn't realize.
Well, that could be true, or that could be that CNN. It's quite possible that CNN paid the guy to say that, so we'll see.
The Hindu, a leading Indian newspaper, documented how at least 100 Indians were recruited by the Russian military as army security helpers. Some had no idea the contracts they signed would place them in the firing line. A group of Indians digging trenches for Russian troops in the Donetsk region were hit by a Ukrainian missile strike last week, killing at least one Indian national. Speaking to the BBC, a man from Indian Kashmir described injuring himself while training near the occupied city of Mariupol with 10 people from India, Nepal and Cuba. I had never touched a gun, he told the British outlet. It was extremely cold, and with the gun in my left hand, I ended up shooting my foot in Ukraine and got.
Why are they doing this to Why are they doing this to India? Why are they making the Indians look retarded?
Ukraine has also seen a surge in fighters from the global south. The Associated Press delved into how numerous former soldiers in Colombia, which maintains one of the largest standing armies in Latin America, have entered the International Legion. Their deployments lack the ideological zeal of the foreign legionaries who flocked to Ukraine in the early months of the war. They're like the Latin American migrants who go to the U.S. in search of a better future, a Colombian ex-combat medic who has trained departing.
Okay, it's just having trouble. Just give it a sec.
Mercenaries told the AP.
Oh, was that the end of the article? I guess that was the end of the article. Okay, there's just a bunch of extra. Let's see here. Yeah. Okay. So there we go. That is the yeah. So there's a bunch of mercenaries in Ukraine. So that's cool. Okay. Let's see what's next on the docket. What's next do I have? Now it's also turned out that according to German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, last year's RG Award winner for Effler of the Year, um, we have we have him saying British soldiers helping fire Ukrainian missiles. Olaf Scholz reveals. Oh no. Germany was accused of a flagrant abuse of intelligence after revealing that British soldiers are supporting Ukrainian forces launching long range Storm Shadow missiles. Olaf Scholz said on Monday that he would not deliver the Taurus, Berlin's equivalent of the Storm Shadow, as it would require soldiers assisting on the ground, citing the UK and French approaches with their own systems. Mr. Schultz argued that following the UK would make Germany a participant in the war. Uh oh. Good job, Schultz. Good job. Uh, this is a flagrant abuse of intelligence deliberately designed to distract from Germany's reluctance to arm Ukraine with its own long range missile system. This will no doubt be used by Russia to racket up the escalation ladder. I mean, then why are they there? Like, you're just pointing. You think the Russians like don't know about that? You think they don't? I don't know. The chancellor's statement regarding uh okay, let's see here, is completely irresponsible. Does it say anywhere that it's wrong? I don't think it says anywhere that that's not the case. I don't think there's any actual denials. Um, nope, there's no denials that I can see. Uh, they've done what we all pretty much knew since the beginning. There is a whole bunch of soldiers there from UK, America, France, manning the anti-air guns. Who knows? It's widely believed that if the F-16s ever get there, NATO pilots will be flying them. There is a case. So the reason why Macron is spurging out is because Putin got pissed off a week or two ago about all the French quote unquote mercenaries that were there that were obviously sent by the French government. So he fired a massive like bomb barrage and killed like 100 French nationals, and now Macron's really pissed off. Let's see here. So we have the Taurus. Um, so yeah, so this came out. They have the like we're back to the narrative of the German missile could strike politically sensitive targets such as Moscow. That's going to work out great. Or the Kerch Bridge linking Russia with occupied Crimea. I mean, like, it doesn't matter. I mean, Russia's building a rail, it's almost done its rail network to Crimea. So even if they blew it up, I mean, there's going to be another overland access. Also, Russia can just supply Crimea by aircraft or by ship. They did that for years. His assertion is a gift to Russian propaganda. Uh, so yeah. Um, so he's afraid that the Taurus missiles will be used to attack Moscow. Um, so yeah. I like to be perfectly honest. I don't really. It's not so much that I have an issue with NATO covertly sending troops to help out Ukraine, because I mean this happens in every war. You always will have volunteers, quote unquote, who will go fight for one side or another. There'll always be kind of a wink, wink, nudge, nudge from their government in support of them. It's just I can't take how fake and Giesler the entire thing is. That's kind of my big issue with the whole thing. Just the pretense, the lies, the pretending that we're not at war with Russia. Oh wait, we are at war at Russia. Oh no, we aren't. So the EU is back. They've decided that they are going to do. They're going to expand the Ukraine cinematic universe by making a remake of Lord of War. Use Russian profits to buy ammo for Ukraine. It's time to start a conversation. The EU should use profits from over 200 billion of Russian frozen assets to fund Ukraine's war effort, European Commission President Ursula von der Crazy said Wednesday. The Commission has long pushed to use the profits. The U.S. is pressing for all the assets to be seized and handed over to Ukraine, but some EU countries fear such a move might create turmoil on financial markets. No shit. So the plan is we are going to take the we're going to take the not the actual assets, the interest off of the Russian frozen assets, and we're going to use that to buy weapons for Ukraine because we can't seize the assets, but we can seize the asset profits. That totally I don't know why that's legal. They're like, we'll invent some like fake war tax or something. Member countries, the Commission is expected to propose a plan to use the profits to support Ukraine. There could be no greater symbol and no greater use for that money to make Ukraine and Europe and all of Europe a safer place to live. Okay, so they're going to take the money. Now, where is this money going to go? Where is this? They have the money now for the weapons. Where are they going to get the weapons? Europe leads world hunt for critically needed artillery shells. Germany, Denmark, and the Czech Republic are even geographically shopping outside of Europe, Canada. The price tag will be high. Let's see here. An ordinary artillery projectile, which cost $1,500 at the beginning of the war, is now 4,000 to 8,000. In 24 months, the fighting against once at the start of the war, when the AFU fired off its entire shell reserve in less than 3 months, and from the stockpiles expended May to June 2023 during a failed counteroffensive in the southern sector. So I thought Russia was out of shells, though. Let's look at this Russia artillery. I thought Russia was struggling. Look, Russia's struggling with supply of weapons. For Ukraine war. This is from like a week ago. Russia isn't able to. Russia is dead. They aren't able to build anything. But we also have this. It's tough, guys. It's tough. Ukraine outgunned 10-1 in massive artillery battle. But Russia is incapable of getting munition to Iran. It's wow. I'm a little confused here. The AFU will probably lose more ground if it falls short of ammo when Russia launches its next major offensive, likely in late April or May. Um, okay, so let's see here. They're just taking the quote. I'm just trying to find this. Uh, where is the Okay, so the EU said that they were going to send Ukraine 1 million shells by March of this year. Now, they have only sent 300,000 shells. However, they lied and said they sent 500,000 shells. But Zelensky called them out on their bullshit, and he's like, "No, you haven't actually sent me as many as you think." First March 2024 to summer 2024, and more recently by Jungle Joseph Borrell in early February by the end of 2024. Okay. By most estimates, the AFU needs about 2,000 shells a day. No, it's way more than that, guy. Like it's like 6 or 7,000 a day. It's okay. Let's see what the actual one is. Okay. Uh Ukraine fires 4 to 7,000. So they're just wrong here. About 2,000 shells a day or 750 shells a year. So they're lying about that. To have a fighting chance of defending its positions and holding ground, and double or even triple that to sustain a full dressed offensive. It's more than that for an offensive. EU deliveries over the past 6 months, in rough terms, depending on the exact months, have been about 20 to 30% less than the minimum. I don't think it's even like that, to be honest. I think EU production is something like 40,000 a month. I forget what it is. It's almost nothing. The Pentagon was quick to send shells it had in stock and slow to build up production. Also, keep in mind, whenever we're talking about shell production numbers, this is assuming every single shell the EU makes goes to Ukraine, and that every single shell the US makes go to Ukraine. None of them go to Israel. None of them go to Japan. None of them go to South Korea. It also assumes that Russia does not destroy any of their ammo dumps with their air supremacy. The Czech Republic, okay, with a bridge. He said, same time, sidestep American political unreliability. If only America had approved that $60 billion with the 10% for the big guy, then like this would be over. Then Ukraine would have won. It's that Johnson he refused to just give Ukraine money. If Ukraine had have gotten that 60 billion, then yeah. So the plan is to just buy shells on the world market. That is a fucking amazing idea. President of the Czech Republic said 500,000 rounds of 155 and another 300,000 rounds of 122 caliber, which we can deliver within weeks if we can find quick funding for that. According to a Sunday article in the German mainstream magazine Der Spiegel, India is one possible seller. Berlin's diplomats are currently in secret negotiations. This sounds like a Giesler op to me. With Delhi counterparts for hundreds of thousands of artillery shells that are stored in Indian arsenals, but Delhi does not want to spoil relations with Moscow and openly transferring them to Ukraine. Taking these circumstances into account, Berlin is negotiating the purchase of ammunition through intermediaries. Now, if that's like, if that is the, if that's true, then India really shouldn't be doing that. I do kind of wonder though if it's like I said, it's a 24-hour Giesler op, where like Germany has just put that like leaked that deliberately to try to destroy Russia's relationship with India. I don't know. Let's see. It's identified. Okay, Aside from India, exclusive of European manufacturers likely already producing at full capacity, major 155 shell manufacturers include South Africa's Ryan Metal, Denel Munition. I'm sure South Africa would love to provide weapons in a war against Russia. I think South Africa is the natural ally for this. South Korea's Pungsen Group and Israel's Elbit Systems. Israel doesn't need shells at the moment. We can buy shells from Israel. Israel's not using artillery. They have a massive stockpile we can buy. Um, Korea has lots of shells. It's not like the U.S. just borrowed 500,000 and depleted their stockpile. Okay, a corporate statement. The first munitions should come off the line in 2025, and full capacity will be reached in 2026. All being well, could manufacture 700,000 shells annually by mid 2025. Uh, okay, I'm just gonna have to press like a massive X to doubt. Um, Financial Times Pan EU annual production capacity will rise to 1.4 million shells by the end of 2024. There's no fucking way that's going to happen. Outstripping the US, no. No. Okay, so they're referencing the international arms market. I wonder what the international arms market could be. That sounds like shady, shady McShadystein. Okay, so Zelensky has so far has only delivered a third of the ammunition the bloc said. So they said they were going to give 1 million. They only gave a third of it, and then they lied and said they gave half of it. So that's cool. Let me see. Trying to find. We also have Turkey, South Africa. Does it say the other countries? Okay. Let's just take a step back. Okay, so let's pretend. Okay, so South Korea doesn't have them, at least not nearly enough. I have my doubts South Africa will sell them. I have my doubts that India will sell them. But the question that I have is, where else would they be getting these shells from? Would they be getting them from like seedy terrorist groups in Africa and the Middle East? Would they be buying them from like sketchy regimes, from active war zones, from, I don't know, ISIS, or just like they're going to just go to third world countries and buy these basically from like terrorist groups? And these shells are going to be like 20 to 30 years old. They're probably not going to work. That's like the big plan. We're going to go full Lord of War. We're going to go full war dogs. The other problem is even if they do this, like the price of weapons is going to just go up like crazy. So that is the did not specify from which countries these purchases would be sourced. Yeah, international black market in the Middle East. That's a great idea. It'd be funny if these shells were being sold to them by North Korea. That would be amazing. If they were buying shells under the table from Ahmed in Oman, who Ahmed in Oman provided them with the stuff that they need. Okay, let's see here. Um, okay, so that is the plan. That is to me. I think that's a terrible plan. To be perfectly honest, but that's where we're at the moment. There's no like there's no shell shortage, guys. Ukraine's winning. Ukraine's taken like 30,000 casualties this whole war. Russia's taken like 5 times as much. Okay, so we're going to get to the feature story for today in a second. But firstly, we have now this is we're doing this a little out of order. This is the counter snake. The U.S. published a massive, the I think it's Washington Post or New York Times published this massive hit piece that just eviscerated Ukraine and completely threw them under the bus. So Budonov, the head of of Ukraine's secret military intelligence, who thinks that he's like a Bond villain, uh, has come out and said Alexei Navalny died of a blood clot. This is the guy who like assassinated Alexander Dugin's daughter. He's done a lot of terrorist attacks, so he's not he's not someone who's a fan of Russia. I may disappoint you, but as far as we know, he indeed died as a result of a blood clot, and this has more or less been confirmed. This wasn't sourced from the internet, but unfortunately, natural causes. He added. So, according to Budonov, he died of natural causes. Now, was these natural causes due to the fact that he was in the Siberian gulag? Probably. That probably contributed to it. But that's not what the narrative was. The narrative was that Putin, and you guys can correct me in the chat if I'm wrong, that Putin deliberately ordered his execution, that he was whacked, that this wasn't like health issues exacerbated by bad living conditions. Putin deliberately had like the KGB, because the KGB is still around, go to there and blow and kill him and shoot him in the back of the head. And that's why he died. It wasn't due to a blood clot. He didn't have a history of poor health. Now, think about this for a second. Let's just think about this. So if he died of a blood clot, I don't know how hard that would be to fake. But Budonov is a sociopath, and he is insane, personally. But I tend to believe him in this because he has no reason to, other than just to fuck with the U.S., for saying this. Like, other than the fact that he's pissed at the U.S., I don't know why else he would say this, because it hurts his own narrative. So immediately when Budonov died, not Budonov, when Navalny died, anyone remember how the U.S. immediately said, "Oh, Russia killed him. The Putin killed him. We need to go to war with Russia. We need to give Ukraine more weapons. We need to pass the Navalny Act that'll allow us to seize the Russian frozen assets. Seize, don't freeze. We need them to seize the Russian frozen assets in Navalny's name." That's like that was the whole narrative, wasn't it? Like, we needed to escalate. Putin killed him. All these people said Putin assassinated him directly. And now Budonov is coming up and saying, no, that's not what happened. That's probably not what happened. And this is the Kiev Post. This is like, I don't know, this might actually be owned by the Ukrainian government. Let me see here. Who's the counter group? Okay, is that only three? Kiev Post. Okay, anyways. Okay, so yeah, so there we go. Next, we have the so that was what he said. Now, this was in response to the other thing. So I'm going to count this as a snake hitting on the U.S. because he's more or less just saying that U.S. is retarded. and they made the whole thing up. And that being said, let's get to today's feature article. Let me just pull it up. And this is the one of the biggest snakeadings I think I've seen so far this war. Let me just, why is it not letting me come up? Give me a second, sorry. Is this it? No, that's foreign troops in Ukraine. Sorry, this is a very long article. I'm not going to be able to. I'll read parts of this that are like directly need to be read, but I just can't read this much. Sorry. Okay.
For more than a decade, the United States has nurtured a secret intelligence partnership with Ukraine that is now critical for both countries in countering Russia. By Adam Entis and Michael Schwartz. Adam.
So, I guess what they're saying is like Putin was right about everything. That I think this is New York Times. Let me just double check which this is. So, like, remember how everyone said Putin was crazy? Putin's paranoid. Yeah, this is New York Times. Putin's nuts. Like, there's no conspiracy against Russia. There's no U.S. NATO plan to try to get Ukraine and turn it into like some sort of battering ram that can be used to destroy Russia. All of that stuff is fake. That stuff is fake news. Putin's just paranoid, and now they're just like, yeah, no, it definitely is.
Nestled in a dense forest, the Ukrainian military base appears abandoned and destroyed, its command center a burned-out husk, a casualty of a Russian missile barrage early in the war, but that is above ground. Not far away, a discreet passageway descends to a subterranean bunker where teams of Ukrainian soldiers track Russian spy satellites and eavesdrop on conversations between Russian commanders. On one screen, a red line followed the route of an explosive drone threading through Russian air defenses from a point in central Ukraine to a target in the Russian city of Rostov, the underground bunker.
Why are they like revealing this? I always have to wonder for these, like, why would you come out and say this? What benefit is this? They're telling them, I mean, I'm sure it's under ground, but they're saying, I'm sure it's abandoned now, but they're saying, oh yeah, there's this secret spy base underneath a burnt out military base that's near the border. I mean, that could define a lot of places, but should you really be telling Russia this information? Like saying, oh, hey guys, we have these secret bunkers underneath these, like, I don't know. I might just be stupid. I might not understand like modern military tactics. It just seems like you shouldn't be publishing stuff like this. Even if Russia does probably know this stuff, I don't get why you would make it easy unless this is disinformation.
Bunker, built to replace the destroyed command center in the months after Russia's invasion, is a secret nerve center of Ukraine's military. There is also one more secret: the base is almost fully financed and partly equipped by the CIA. 110%. Gen. Serhiy Beretsky, a top intelligence commander, said in an interview at the base, now entering the third year of a war that has claimed hundreds of thousands of lives, the intelligence partnership between Washington and Kyiv is a linchpin of Ukraine's ability to defend itself. The CIA and other American intelligence agencies provide intelligence for targeted missile strikes, track Russian troop movements, and help support spy networks. But the part.
Let me know if you can hear this okay. Like if this is like it's coherent. Sorry, it's a very long article and I can't read it. So I just don't get why they would publish this. Because isn't this basically pro-Russian propaganda? Like, isn't this the narrative Russia's been pushing since the beginning? That Ukraine is a Western puppet state that like the CIA overthrew Victor Yanukovych's government and brought like a pro-Western regime to power. Like, hasn't that been the narrative the whole time? And the way that they're addressing this and saying that like Russia's crazy, there was no coup, the U.S. wasn't controlling Ukraine from behind the scenes, it's not a proxy war, the U.S. is not directly involved. We're going to publish this fucking article. Um, some would say that the New York Times revelations now would indicate the inevitable abandonment of Ukraine. I have seen that as well. That is why this is part of the snakening. The whole point of the snakening is to basically just throw Ukraine under the bus and to try to shift blame. The goal is to try to shift blame. So.
But the partnership is no wartime creation, nor is Ukraine the only beneficiary. It took root a decade ago, coming together in fits and starts under three very different U.S. presidents, pushed forward by key individuals who often took daring risks. It has transformed Ukraine, whose intelligence agencies were long seen as thoroughly compromised by Russia, into one of Washington's most important intelligence partners against the Kremlin today, a part of Malaysia Airlines Flight 7.
Wait a minute, what's this?
The Ukrainians also helped U.S. officials pursue the Russian operatives who meddled in the 2016 U.S. presidential election between Donald J. Trump and Hillary Rodham Clinton. Damon Witch.
So wait a minute, they're even just saying like, okay, so the fake Russiagate hoax, the fake Russiagate hoax, we're just admitting that yeah, the U.S. like got dudes in Ukraine to make shit up to back it. Like, this is one of the most like noses exposed, mask off things I've seen in quite a while. Like, I just want to ask you, like, is my reading of this wrong? Like, they're admitting that the U.S. was using Ukrainian intelligence to get information, fake information, to try to carry forward this whole narrative about Russiagate. Like, I don't. Isn't this just saying that the deep state exists? Like, they're just admitting it here. They're really just saying the CIA is part of the deep state, and they tried to screw Trump over. Wasn't Trump impeached for calling Zelensky? So like he can't call him, but the CIA could do this gay op behind the scenes and get the Ukrainian intelligence to like. It's so insane. It's so insane.
The listening post in the Ukrainian forest is part of a CIA-supported network of spy bases constructed in the past 8 years that includes 12 secret locations along the Russian border. Before the war, the Ukrainians proved themselves to the Americans by collecting intercepts that helped prove Russia's involvement in the 20.
Once again, maybe I'm just stupid. I'm not a military man. I'm not a Cadillo. It doesn't seem like a good idea to me to say, like, why would you give the number? Like, say, oh, there's 12 bases along the Russian border. Why would you give the number? Why would you say they're along the Russian border? I guess they've been evacuated now, but and that the stuff has been scrubbed. But I mean, someone might have left a computer somewhere. Someone might have left a document somewhere. I'm sure there's stuff that the Russians could figure out of it. Why would you say how many locations there are, that they're along the border, and what they were doing there? It just seems insane to me. Let's just do a thought process for a minute. Would the Russian government ever allow an article like this to come out, unless it was disinformation? Would like TASS or Russia Today or RT allow an article like this to be published? Would they put this out and say, okay, well, the FSB has like 10 bases in Germany, in the Munich metropolitan area or whatever. Okay, we have some other. This is going to be a shocker right here. Yeah, you'd be surprised we could pull out of a supposedly dead computer, right? I mean, I just like I'm sorry I say this so often, but I just have to wonder, like, am I stupid for thinking that? Like, do I just not understand how intelligence works or how war works? That it might be a bad idea to publicly like reveal where your secret bases were. Like maybe 50 years later, if we're talking about like intelligence during the Cold War, during World War II or something, but not during an active fucking war zone.
Before the war, the Ukrainians proved themselves to the Americans by collecting intercepts that helped prove Russia's involvement in the 2014 downing of a commercial jetliner, Malaysia Airlines Flight 17. The Ukrainians also helped the Americans go after the Russian operatives who meddled in the 2016 U.S. presidential election.
Okay, that's sussy as fuck then. So the evidence that Russia shot down the Malaysian Airlines flight came from Ukrainians' intelligence that was trained by the CIA and was operating in secret bases. 100% that's true. 100%. That actually that makes me very suspicious about the whole Malaysian thing, because none of these Ukrainians would lie.
Around 2016, the CIA began training an elite Ukrainian commando force, known as Unit 2245, which captured Russian drones and communications gear so that CIA technicians could reverse engineer them and crack Moscow's encryption systems. One officer in the unit was Kirill Budonov, now the general leading Ukraine's military intelligence.
And they're just admitting it. Like, once again, am I like, this is insane that this was published, let alone in the New York fucking Times. The U.S. is just, we trained like this crack team of Ukrainian commandos. We gave them a LARPy name, and we got them to go and steal shit from Russia. I mean, that's not shady. Like, once again, I mean, doesn't this kind of prove everything Putin said correct? That they were pulling this shit from behind the scenes? I don't know.
Also helped train a new generation of Ukrainian spies who operated inside Russia, across Europe, and in Cuba and other places where the Russians have a large presence. The relationship is so ingrained that CIA officers remained at a remote location in western Ukraine when the Biden administration evacuated U.S. personnel in the weeks before Russia invaded in February 2022. During the invasion, the officers relayed critical intelligence, including where Russia was planning strikes and which weapons systems they would use. Without them, there would have been no way for us to resist the Russians.
Can you imagine if during World War II, like Alan Turing had gone to, I don't know, what was a British paper at that time? The Times on London. The Times of London or someone had gone to them and done an article and said, yeah, we cracked the Enigma code machine, guys. We cracked the Enigma code machine, and just announced that. So now they're like, yeah, no, we've been doing all this. We've been directly helping them out. Once again, and this is when we get into the whole, like, the actual military aid America has provided Ukraine with is kind of secondary. Like, if we were going to think about, I don't even know how you put it into dollars, but how much do you think that that's worth? Because I'm sure this was not part of the aid package. Having unlimited use of the CIA to train your intelligence services, the CIA assets, American hackers, American satellites, all that stuff is probably tens of billions more, at least.
The details of this intelligence partnership, many of which are being disclosed by the New York Times for the first time, have been a closely guarded secret for a decade. In more than 200 interviews, current and former officials in Ukraine, The United States and Europe described a partnership that nearly foundered from mutual distrust before it steadily expanded, turning Ukraine into an intelligence-gathering hub that intercepted more Russian communications than the CIA station in Kyiv could initially handle. Many of the officials spoke on condition of anonymity to discuss intelligence and matters of sensitive diplomacy.
Well, I mean, no shit. It's sensitive.
Now these intelligence networks are more important than ever, as Russia is on the offensive and Ukraine is more dependent on sabotage and long-range missile strikes that require spies far behind enemy lines. And they are increasingly at risk if Republicans in Congress end military funding to Kyiv. The CIA may have to scale back to try to.
I'm pretty sure that's Harvest Summer. Okay, we're gonna just take a slight field trip from this, because this reminds me of like another schizo thing that Zelensky said. Let's see, where is it? So Zelensky has said this before. Zelensky said counteroffensive plans were leaked to Russia. Our counteroffensive plans were on the Kremlin's table before the counteroffensive began. You leaked them, though. Like, do we have to bring this up again? You literally put out a fucking trailer. Dramatic cinematic film. Like, what? This was put out like a couple weeks before the offensive. Huh? Offensive now have trailers. Ukraine releases cinematic trailer as counteroffensive begins. So, like, but no, it was leaked. What? Like, he literally leaked it. It's this fucking movie trailer. You put it out. What this is. What even is this? What even's happening?
To try to reassure you. From the outset, a shared adversary, President Vladimir V. Putin of Russia, brought the CIA and its Ukrainian partners together. Obsessed with losing Ukraine to the West, Mr. Putin had regularly interfered in Ukraine's political system, handpicking leaders he believed would keep Ukraine within Russia's orbit, yet each time it backfired, driving protests.
I mean, that's literally what you're doing in Russia. Like, we can go back, and I don't have it in front of me, but like, the National Endowment for Democracy talks about like how they recruited Navalny, and they showed an attack. Yeah, like Black People School, you're not crazy. They announced where they were going to attack. Let me see this. Let me see if I can find these articles. Like, it's so insane. Spring offensive targeting Crimea. Okay. Spring offensive is waiting on weapons. Ukrainian forces just recaptured her son. A further spring offensive could see Ukraine try to push south, though slash supply lines to Crimea. Isn't that what wound up happening? Like, they published this like planned spring offensive to cut off. Like, and I remember this at the time. It was like months before they announced where it was going to be. Like, how is it a leak? What? What a fucking cloud.
protesters into the streets. Mr. Putin has long blamed Western intelligence agencies for manipulating and sowing anti-Russia sentiment in Ukraine. Toward the end of 2021, according to a senior European official, Mr. Putin was weighing whether to launch his full-scale invasion when he met with the head
Once
of one
again,
of
we
Russia's
have
main spy
full-scale
services,
invasion.
who told him that the CIA, together with Britain's MI6, were controlling Ukraine and turning it into a...
They have to say full-scale invasion. Now, has long blamed Western intelligence agencies for manipulating Kiev and sowing anti-Russian sentiment in Ukraine. Doesn't this, like, kind of prove that? Like, we have this whole article about this, like, CIA controls the entire Ukrainian intelligence service. Okay.
One of Russia's main spy services, who told him that the CIA, together with Britain's MI6, were controlling Ukraine and turning it into a beachhead for operations against Moscow. But the Times investigation found that Mr. Putin and his advisors misread a critical dynamic. The CIA didn't push its way into Ukraine. U.S. officials were often reluctant to fully engage, fearing that Ukrainian officials could not be trusted, and worrying about provoking the Kremlin.
What a cope. What a galaxy tier cope. So they're like, well, okay, so Putin was technically right about everything, but he isn't, okay, guys?
Yet a tight circle of Ukrainian intelligence officials assiduously courted the CIA and gradually made themselves vital to the Americans. In 2015, Gen. Valery Kondratyuk, then Ukraine's head of military intelligence, arrived at a meeting with the CIA's deputy station chief and without warning handed over a stack of top-secret files. That initial tranche contained secrets about the Russian Navy's Northern Fleet, including detailed information about the latest Russian nuclear submarine designs. Before long, teams of CIA officers were regularly leaving his office with backpacks full of documents. We understood that we needed to create the conditions of trust, General Kondratyuk said. As the partnership deepened after 2016, the Ukrainians became impatient with what they considered Washington's undue caution, and began staging assassinations and other lethal operations, which violated the terms the White House thought the Ukrainians had agreed to. Infuriated, officials in Washington threatened to cut off support, but they never did. The relationships only got stronger and stronger because both sides saw value in it, and the U.S.
So we were cool with the we were cool with all the assassinations, guys. The assassinations were great.
U.S. Embassy in Kyiv, our station there, the operation out of Ukraine, became the best source of information, signals and everything else on Russia, said a former senior American official. We couldn't get enough of it.
Once again, doesn't this confirm that, like, what? We turned Ukraine into basically a giant spy base against Russia, but Putin is paranoid because like, it just says he's paranoid here. It doesn't explain why.
The CIA's partnership in Ukraine can be traced back to 2 phone calls on the night of Feb. 24, 2014, 8 years to the day before Russia's full-scale invasion.
Stop saying full-scale invasion.
Millions of Ukrainians had just overrun the country's pro-Kremlin government, and the president, Viktor Yanukovych, and his spy chiefs had fled to Russia. In the tumult, a fragile pro-Western government quickly took power. The government's new spy chief, Valentin Nalyvaichenko, arrived at the headquarters of the Domestic Intelligence Agency and found a pile of smoldering documents in the courtyard. Inside, many of the computers had been wiped or were infected with Russian malware. It was empty. No lights. No leadership.
So, I like how it's like the CIA's partnership in Ukraine, and then they immediately talk about Euromaidan. It's like, yeah, the pro-Kremlin government got overthrown. I know they're not directly admitting to a coup, but this is very sus. This is very sussy. This is like looking at another dude's dick in the bathroom levels of sus. I don't know why it keeps freezing. It's kind of annoying.
The government's
Oh, let's see here.
The government's new spy chief, Valentin Nalivaychenko, arrived at the headquarters of the Domestic Intelligence Agency and found a pile of smoldering documents in the courtyard. Inside, many of the computers had been wiped or were infected with Russian malware. It was empty. No lights. No leadership. Nobody was there. Mr. Nalivaychenko said in an interview. He went to an office and called the CIA station chief and the local head of MI6. It was near midnight, but he summoned them to the building, asked for help in rebuilding the agency from the ground up, and proposed a three-way partnership. That's how it all started.
So the day after the government was overthrown, the new spy chief just happened to have like all these information. Like he just called the CIA. I mean that's how it works, isn't it? He just had the phone number, the CIA's phone number, MI6's phone number. These things are just in telephone books. He just happened to have these people's phone numbers, and it's really convenient that the guy who was made spy chief, like the day after the coup, had like the CIA and the MI6 guy on speed dial, and he had the authority. He knew them well enough that he could just call them and they just showed up. It's very interesting. It's cool.
His situation quickly became more dangerous. Mr. Putin seized Crimea. His agents fomented separatist rebellions that would become a war in the country's east. Ukraine was on war foot.
I'm gonna be honest. Like a lot of this stuff I didn't even know. Like I didn't realize just how direct actually it was. This is really making the case that it was a coup. I mean,
war footing, and Mr. Nalivaychenko appealed to the CIA for overhead imagery and other intelligence to help defend its territory. With violence escalating, an unmarked U.S. government plane touched down at an airport in Kyiv carrying John O'Brennan, then the director of the CIA. He told Mr. Nalivaychenko that the CIA was interested in developing a relationship but only at a pace the agency was comfortable with, according to U.S. and Ukrainian officials. To the CIA, the unknown question was how long Mr. Nalivaychenko and the pro-Western government would be around. The CIA had been burned before in Ukraine. Following the breakup of the Soviet Union in 1991, Ukraine gained independence and then veered between competing political forces. Now Mr. Brennan explained that to unlock CIA assistance, the Ukrainians had to prove that they could provide intelligence of value to the Americans. They also needed to purge Russian spies. The domestic spy agency, the SBU, was riddled with them. Case in point, the Russians quickly learned about Mr. Brennan's supposedly secret visit. The Kremlin's propaganda outlets published a photoshopped image of the CIA director wearing a clown wig and makeup. Mr.
yeah, but how are they wrong? They even say here, like the leader of of America's International Intelligence Service showed up like the day after in an unmarked plane and made like a security pact. Like that's not sus.
Mr. Brennan returned to Washington, where advisors to President Barack Obama were deeply concerned about provoking Moscow. The White House crafted secret rules that infuriated the Ukrainians and that some inside the CIA thought of as handcuffs. The rules barred intelligence agencies from providing any support to Ukraine that could be reasonably expected to have lethal consequences. Masked Russian soldiers guarding a Ukrainian military base.
Sorry, it just keeps freezing for some reason. I'm not really sure why.
In Kyiv, Mr. Nalivaychenko picked a longtime aide, General Kondratyuk, to serve as head of counterintelligence, and they created a new paramilitary unit that was deployed behind enemy lines to conduct operations and gather intelligence that the CIA or MI6 would not provide to them. Known as the 5th Directorate, this unit would be filled with officers born after Ukraine gained independence. They had no connection with Russia, General Kondratyuk said. They didn't even know what the Soviet Union was.
That doesn't speak well for the Ukrainian education system.
That summer, Malaysia Airlines Flight 17, flying from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur, blew up in midair and crashed in eastern Ukraine, killing nearly 300 passengers and crew. The 5th Directorate produced telephone intercepts and other intelligence within hours of the crash that quickly placed responsibility on Russian-backed separatists.
You know, that's interesting that they just happen to have what? So the plane got blown up. They just happen to have like all this stuff sitting around. Like, oh yeah, we have all these telephone intercepts. We have all this other evidence that Russian separatists did it. We just had it sitting around. We somehow just came across it like right after the plane blew up. What? Isn't this kind of like admitting that they did it? Or that's a heavy implication. I know produced technically doesn't mean that, but it sounds like they produced as in they made them up. Like, I had never even really thought about that. Like, once again, people in the chat, am I crazy? Like, does this not sound like, and this is the New York Times, this isn't me. Does this New York Times article not sound like the Malaysian Flight 17 was a gay op that the Ukrainians and Americans blew up to try to make Russia look bad?
The CIA was impressed and made its first meaningful commitment by providing secure communications gear and specialized training to members of the 5th Directorate and 2 other elite units. The Ukrainians wanted fish and we, for policy reasons, couldn't deliver that fish, said a former U.S. official, referring to intelligence that could help them battle the Russians. But we were happy to teach them how to fish and deliver fly fishing equipment, a secret Santa. In the summer of 2015, Ukraine's president, Petro Poroshenko, shook up the domestic service and installed an ally to replace Mr. Nalivaychenko, the CIA's trusted partner. But the change created an opportunity elsewhere. In the reshuffle, General Kondratyuk was appointed as the head of the country's military intelligence agency, known as the HER, where years earlier he had started his career. It would be an early example of how personal ties, more than policy shifts, would deepen the CIA's involvement in Ukraine.
So they're saying, isn't this basically admitting that there's a Ukrainian deep state that is directly connected to the CIA?
Unlike the domestic agency, the HER had the authority to collect intelligence outside the country, including in Russia. But the Americans had seen little value in cultivating the agency because it wasn't producing any intelligence of value on the Russians, and because it was seen as a bastion of Russian sympathizers. Trying to build trust, General Kondratyuk arranged a meeting with his American counterpart at the Defense Intelligence Agency and handed over a stack of secret Russian documents. But senior DIA officials were suspicious and discouraged building closer ties. The general needed to find a more willing partner. Months earlier, while still with the domestic agency, General Kondratyuk.
So, like, is this whole thing? I don't get why this was. So, is this published because they're snaking on Kiev? They're going to snake on Ukraine, and this is part of throwing Ukraine under the bus. Is that what this is? Because I honestly am just kind of having trouble. I don't know.
After a long day of meetings, the CIA took General Kondratyuk to a Washington Capitals hockey match, where he and the incoming station chief sat in a luxury box and loudly booed Alex Ovechkin, the team's star player from Russia. The station chief had not yet arrived when General
What the fuck? What is this? This is like a scene from like Death of Stalin, or this is a scene from some kind of comedy movie. They booed the whatever. Okay, 1 second. That crashed. I don't know why that crashed. Just give me a second to bring that up again. Okay, that was annoying. 1 second, let me just reload this. Oops, no, not always. Okay, 1 second. There we go. There we go, that crashed. Okay,
The station chief had not yet arrived when General Kondratyuk handed over to the CIA the secret documents about the Russian Navy. There's more where this came from, he promised, and the documents were sent off to analysts in Langley. The analysts concluded the documents were authentic, and after the station chief arrived in Kyiv, the CIA became General Kondratyuk's primary partner. General Kondratyuk knew he needed the CIA to strengthen his own agency. The CIA thought the general might be able to help Langley, too. It struggled to recruit spies inside Russia because its case officers were under heavy surveillance. For a Russian, allowing oneself to be recruited by an American is to commit the absolute, ultimate in treachery and treason, General Kondratyuk said. But for a Russian to be recruited by a Ukrainian is just friends talking over a beer. The new station chief began regularly visiting General Kondratyuk, whose office was decorated with an aquarium where yellow and blue fish, the national colors of Ukraine, swam circles around a model of a sunken Russian submarine. The two men became close.
That is cringe.
Close, which drove the relationship between the two agencies, and the Ukrainians gave the new station chief an affectionate nickname, Santa Claus. In January 2016, General Kondratyuk flew to Washington for meetings at Scattergood, an estate on the CIA campus in Virginia where the agency often fates visiting dignitaries. The agency agreed to help the HER modernize, and to improve its ability to intercept Russian military communications. In exchange, General Kondratyuk agreed to share all of the raw intelligence with the Americans. Now the partnership was real. Operation Gold? SH. Today, the narrow road leading to the secret base is framed by minefields, seeded as a line of defense in the weeks after Russia's invasion. The Russian missiles that hit the base had seemingly shut it down, but just weeks later the Ukrainians returned, with money and equipment provided by the CIA. Crews under General Brzezinski's command began to rebuild, but underground. To avoid detection, they only worked at night and when Russian spy satellites were not overhead. Workers also parked their cars a distance away from the construction site. In the bunker, General Brzezinski pointed to communications equipment and large computer servers, some of which were financed by the CIA. He said his teams were using the base to hack into the Russian military's secure communications networks. This is the thing that breaks into satellites and decodes secret conversations, General Brzezinski told a Times journalist on a tour, adding that they were hacking into spy satellites from China and Belarus, too. Another officer placed two recently produced maps on a table, as evidence of how Ukraine is tracking Russian activity around the world. The first showed the overhead routes of Russian spy satellites traveling over central Ukraine. The second showed how Russian spy satellites are passing over strategic military installations, including a nuclear weapons facility, in the eastern and central United States, a military checkpoint, with a sign indicating landmines along the roadside, blocking the road to the Russian border in Ukraine's Kharkiv region, in December last year. David Guttenfelder for The New York Times, Ukrainian police officers setting up a mobile checkpoint in Ukraine's Kharkiv region near the Russian border in December. David Guttenfelder for The New York Times, the CIA began sending equipment in 2016, after the pivotal meeting at Scattergood, General Beretsky said, providing encrypted radios and devices for intercepting secret enemy communications. Beyond the base, the CIA also oversaw a training program, carried out in 2 European cities, to teach Ukrainian intelligence officers how to convincingly assume fake personas and steal secrets in Russia and other countries that are adept at rooting out spies. The program was called Operation Goldfish, which derived from a joke about a Russian-speaking goldfish who offers 2 Estonians wishes in exchange for its freedom. The punchline was that one of the Estonians bashed the fish's head with a rock, explaining that anything speaking Russian could not be trusted.
That's cool. That's that's not a hateful name. That's not a Russophobic name. That's it's fucking Operation Goldfish. Might as well be like Operation Bananarama or Operation, I don't know, Starfall.
Operation Goldfish officers were soon deployed to 12 newly built, forward operating bases constructed along the Russian border. From each base, General Kondratyuk said, the Ukrainian officers ran networks of agents who gathered intelligence inside Russia. CIA officers installed equipment at the bases to help gather intelligence and also identified some of the most skilled Ukrainian graduates of the Operation Goldfish program, working with them to approach potential Russian sources. These graduates then trained sleeper agents on Ukrainian territory meant to launch guerrilla operations in case of occupation. It can often take years for the CIA.
Wait, what? Wait, whoa. What is that?
These graduates then trained sleeper agents on Ukrainian territory meant to launch guerrilla operations in case of occupation.
So they were training Ukrainian soldiers to carry out asymmetric warfare against Russia? And this is not feeding into his paranoia, like Putin's paranoia.
It can often take years for the CIA to develop enough trust in a foreign agency to begin conducting joint operations. With the Ukrainians, it had taken less than 6 months. The new partnership started producing so much raw intelligence about Russia that it had to be shipped to Langley for processing. But the CIA did have red lines. It wouldn't help the Ukrainians conduct offensive lethal operations. We made a distinction between intelligence collection operations and things that go boom, a former senior U.S. official said. This is our country. It was a distinction that grated on the Ukrainians. First, General Kondratyuk was annoyed when the Americans refused to provide satellite images from inside Russia. Soon after, he requested CIA assistance in planning a clandestine mission to send her commandos into Russia to plant explosive devices at train depots used by the Russian military. If the Russian military sought to take more Ukrainian territory, Ukrainians could detonate the explosives to slow the Russian advance. When the station chief briefed his superiors, they lost their minds, as one former official put it. M.R. Brennan, the CIA director, called General Kondratyuk to make certain that mission was cancelled and that Ukraine abided by the red lines forbidding lethal operations. General Kondratyuk cancelled the mission, but he also took a different lesson. Going forward, we were to not have discussions about these things with your guys, he said. Late that summer, Ukrainian spies discovered that Russian forces were deploying attack helicopters at an airfield on the Russian-occupied Crimean Peninsula, possibly to stage a surprise attack. General Kondratyuk decided to send a team into Crimea to plant explosives at the airfield so they could be detonated if Russia moved to attack. This time, he didn't ask the CIA for permission. He turned to Unit 2245, the commando force that received specialized military training from the CIA's elite paramilitary group, known as the Ground Department. The intent of the training was to teach defensive techniques, but CIA officers understood that.
So, like, this is like a fucking spy movie. We got Unit 2245. This sounds like something from Spec Ops: The Line. The ground department. That's totally not Delta Force.
Understood that without their knowledge the Ukrainians could use the same techniques in offensive lethal operations. Petro Poroshenko, then the president of Ukraine, right, and Joseph R. Biden Jr., then the U.S. vice president, during a meeting in Kyiv in 2015. Pull photo by Mikhail Pilinkek, general. At the time, the future head of Ukraine's military intelligence agency, General Budonov, was a rising star in Unit 2245. He was known for daring operations behind enemy lines and had deep ties to the CIA. The agency had trained him and also taken the extraordinary step of sending him for rehabilitation to Walter Reed National Military Medical Center in Maryland after he was shot in the right arm during fighting in the Donbas, disguised in Russian uniforms, then LT. Col. Budonov led commandos across a narrow gulf in inflatable speedboats, landing at night in Crimea.
Why does this keep... Okay, I'm gonna try to fix this. Give me a second. Just give me a sec. So, okay, I think the Donbass thing, honestly, knowing Budonov and his reputation, he was probably killing civilians there. Like, let's be honest, Budonov is as shady as they come, and it would not surprise me if that's what he was doing there. Just shooting civilians. So, isn't fighting in enemy uniforms a war crime? Yes, it is. It is a war crime, but that doesn't matter. Because of Putler. I don't know why it's having so much trouble. Okay, just give it a second and I'll resume.
Iranians fought back, killing several Russian fighters, including the son of a general, before retreating to the shoreline, plunging into the sea and swimming for hours to Ukrainian-controlled territory. It was a disaster. In a public address, President Putin accused the Ukrainians of plotting a terrorist attack and promised to avenge the deaths of the Russian fighters. There is no doubt that we will not.
I mean, weren't they... But they were plotting a terrorist attack. They were disguised? What?
Will not let these things pass, he said. In Washington, the Obama White House was livid. Joseph R. Biden Jr., then the vice president and a champion of assistance to Ukraine, called Ukraine's president to angrily complain. It causes a gigantic problem, Mr. Biden said in the call, a recording of which was leaked and published online. All I'm telling you as a friend is that my making arguments here is a hell of a lot harder now. Some of Mr. Obama's advisors wanted to shut the CIA program down, but Mr. Brennan persuaded them that doing so would be self-defeating, given the relationship was starting to produce intelligence on the Russians as the CIA was investigating Russian election meddling. Mr. Brennan got on the phone with General Kondratyuk to again emphasize the red line.
So they were doing shady shit. They were doing war crime shit. But they were getting us information about our political opponents. So isn't this like openly admitting that there was a conspiracy against Trump? Like they're just saying it. They're saying, yeah, we worked with shady Ukrainians to get this info on Trump.
Lines. The general was upset. "This is our country," he responded, according to a colleague. "It's our war, and we've got to fight." The blowback from Washington cost General Kondratyuk his job. But Ukraine didn't back down. The pro-Russian rebel commander Arseny Pavlov, known as Motorola, saluting while taking part in a military parade in Donetsk. One day after General Kondratyuk was removed, a mysterious explosion in the Russian-occupied city of Donetsk, in eastern Ukraine, ripped through an elevator carrying a senior Russian separatist commander named Arseny Pavlov, known by his nom de guerre, Motorola. The CIA soon learned that the assassins were members of the 5th Directorate, the spy group that received CIA training. Ukraine's domestic intelligence agency had even handed out commemorative patches to those involved, each one stitched with the word lift, the British term for an elevator. Again, some of Mr. Obama's advisors were furious.
What? They blew up an elevator in Donetsk City. They had like patches that said elevator on them? What? Okay. I don't know why this is having so much trouble, but let's continue.
Were furious, but they were lame ducks. The presidential election pitting Donald J. Trump against Hillary Rodham Clinton was 3 weeks away, and the assassinations continued. A team of Ukrainian agents set up an unmanned, shoulder-fired rocket launcher in a building in the occupied territories. It was directly across from the office of a rebel commander named Mikhail Tolstik, better known as Givy. Using a remote trigger, they fired the launcher as soon as Givy entered his office, killing him, according to U.S. and Ukrainian officials. A shadow war was now in overdrive. The Russians used a car bomb to assassinate the head of Unit 2245, the elite Ukrainian commando force. The commander, Col. Maxim Shapoval, was on his way to meeting with CIA officers in Kyiv when his car exploded. At the colonel's wake, the U.S. ambassador to Ukraine, Marie Yovanovitch, stood in mourning beside the CIA station chief. Later, CIA Mr. Trump praised Mr. Putin and dismissed Russia's role in election interference. He was suspicious of Ukraine and later tried to pressure its president, Volodymyr Zelensky, to investigate his Democratic rival, Mr. Biden, resulting in Mr. Trump's first impeachment. But whatever Mr. Trump said and did, his...
But didn't this article just confirm, like 2 seconds ago, that Trump was 100% right, that the Democrats were getting information from Ukrainian intelligence? I mean, isn't that like that was just confirmed? So basically it's saying no, Trump was 100% on track when he said that when he was like, hey, is Ukrainian intelligence working with Biden to try to like smear me with this fake Russian thing? It's saying here that's 100% accurate, or at least that's the implication.
His administration often went in the other direction. This is because Mr. Trump had put Russia hawks in key positions, including Mike Pompeo as CIA director and John Bolton as national security advisor.
That was a bad idea.
They visited Kyiv to underline their full support for the secret partnership, which expanded to include more specialized training programs and the building of additional secret bases. The base in the forest grew to include a new command center and barracks, and swelled from 80 to 800 Ukrainian intelligence officers. Preventing Russia from interfering in future U.S. elections was a top CIA priority during this period, and Ukrainian and American
Okay, that line is fucking amazing. U.S. elections were a top CIA priority during this period. That's that's an interesting it's an interesting statement. So the CIA is really interested in American elections. That's
American intelligence officers joined forces to probe the computer systems of Russia's intelligence agencies to identify operatives trying to manipulate voters. Vladimir V. Putin, the
yeah, yeah, that's what it was.
in one joint operation, her team duped an officer from Russia's military intelligence service into providing information that allowed the CIA to connect Russia's government to the so-called Fancy Bear hacking group, which had been linked to election interference efforts in a number of countries. General Budonov, whom Mr. Zelensky tapped to lead the HER in 2020, said of the partnership, "It only strengthened. It grew systematically." The cooperation expanded to additional spheres and became more large-scale. The relationship was so successful that the CIA wanted to replicate it with other European intelligence services that shared a focus in countering Russia. The head of Russia House, the CIA.
Okay, so there was there was a giant European-wide conspiracy against Putin, like pretty much, and they're admitting here that they were turning Ukraine into a Trojan horse to fight Russia. Like, 1 second. For some reason, it keeps auto backing up the text file, which is I don't know why it's doing that, but we're almost done. Like, I still can't believe this got
CIA
published.
Department overseeing operations against Russia organized a secret meeting at The Hague. There, representatives from the CIA, Britain's MI6, the HER, the Dutch service, a critical intelligence ally, and other agencies agreed to start pooling together more of their intelligence on Russia. The result was a secret coalition against Russia, and the Ukrainians were vital members of it.
The result was a secret coalition against Russia, and the Ukrainians were vital members of it. There was a secret coalition against Russia. I mean, yeah. So basically, Putin was in paranoid.
In March 2021, the Russian military started massing troops along the border with Ukraine. As the months passed, and more troops encircled the country, the question was whether Mr. Putin was making a feint or preparing for war. That November, and in the weeks that followed, the CIA and MI6 delivered a unified message to their Ukrainian partners. Russia was preparing for a full-scale invasion to decapitate the government and install a puppet in Kyiv who would do the Kremlin's bidding. U.S. and British intelligence agencies had intercepts that Ukrainian intelligence agencies did not have access to, according to U.S. officials. The new intelligence listed the names of Ukrainian officials whom the Russians were planning to kill or capture, as well as the Ukrainians the Kremlin hoped to install in power. Russian self-propelled howitzers being loaded to the train car at the station outside Taganrog. President Zelensky and some of his top advisors appeared unconvinced, even after Mr. Burns, the CIA director, rushed to Kyiv in January 2022 to brief them. As the Russian invasion neared, CIA and MI6 officers made final visits in Kyiv with their Ukrainian peers. One of the MI6 officers teared up in front of the Ukrainians, out of concern that the Russians would kill them. At Mr. Burns' urging, a small group of CIA officers were exempted from the broader U.S. evacuation and were relocated to a hotel complex in western Ukraine. They didn't want to desert their partners. No endgame.
Something from like a fucking spy movie. It's like it's like that scene from the Horatio Hornblower movie where it's like the French general says to the British general, "This isn't your country. You don't have to die here." And he said, "I'm not dead yet." And then they like go in and shoot a bunch of other French guys.
After Mr. Putin launched the invasion on Feb.
Scale
24,
invasion.
2022, the CIA officers at the hotel were the only U.S. government presence on the ground. Every day at the hotel, they met with their Ukrainian contacts to pass information. The old handcuffs were off, and the Biden White House authorized spy agencies to provide intelligence support for lethal operations against Russian forces on Ukrainian soil, often the CIA. Briefings contained shockingly specific details. On March 3, 2022, the eighth day of the war, the CIA team gave a precise overview of Russian plans for the coming 2 weeks. The Russians would open a humanitarian corridor out of the besieged city of Mariupol that same day, and then open fire on the Ukrainians who used it. The Russians planned to encircle the strategic port city of Odessa, according to the CIA, but a storm delayed the assault and the Russians never took the city. Then, on March 10, the Russians intended to bombard 6 Ukrainian cities, and had already entered coordinates into cruise missiles for those.
Doesn't them saying like these specific things they foiled give the Russians some idea as to where the leak came from, or like if there's deep cover agents or infiltrators? Don't they have some idea of who had access to these plans and they can like work back and try to figure it out?
For those
I don't know.
strikes, the Russians also were trying to assassinate top Ukrainian officials, including Mr. Zelensky. In at least one case, the CIA shared intelligence with Ukraine's domestic agency that helped disrupt a plot against the president, according to a senior Ukrainian official.
Oops.
When the Russian assault on Kyiv had stalled, the CIA station chief rejoiced and told his Ukrainian counterparts that they were punching the Russians in the face, according to a Ukrainian officer who was in the room. Within weeks, the CIA had returned to Kyiv, and the agency sent in scores of new officers to help the Ukrainians. A senior U.S. official said of the CIA's sizable presence, "Are they pulling triggers? No. Are they helping with targeting? Absolutely." Some of the CIA officers were deployed to Ukrainian bases. They reviewed lists of potential Russian targets that the Ukrainians were preparing to strike, comparing the information that the Ukrainians had with U.S. intelligence to ensure that it was accurate. Before the invasion, the CIA and MI6 had trained their Ukrainian counterparts on recruiting sources and building clandestine and partisan networks. In the southern Kherson region, which was occupied by Russia in the first weeks of
Assassinating local
in
collaborators and helping Ukrainian for wow, it sounds like spying. Is it legal to do any of this stuff? Doesn't this go against like international law? I could be wrong. I might
In
be.
July 2022, Ukrainian spies saw Russian convoys preparing to cross a strategic bridge across the Dnipro River and notified MI6. British and American intelligence officers then quickly verified the Ukrainian intelligence, using real-time satellite imagery. MI6 relayed the confirmation, and the Ukrainian military opened fire with rockets, destroying the convoys. At the underground bunker, General Beretsky said a German anti-aircraft system now defends against Russian attacks. An air filtration system guards against chemical weapons and a dedicated power system is available if the power grid goes down. The question that some Ukrainian intelligence officers are now asking their American counterparts, as Republicans in the House weigh whether to cut off billions of dollars in aid, is whether the CIA will abandon them. It happened in Afghanistan before and now it's going to happen in Ukraine, a senior Ukrainian officer said, referring to Mr. Burns' visit to Kyiv last week. A CIA official said, "We have demonstrated a clear commitment to Ukraine over many years and this visit was another strong signal that the U.S. commitment will continue." The CIA and the HER have built 2 other secret bases to intercept Russian communications, and combined with the 12 forward operating bases, which General Kondratyuk says are still operating.
Wait, they're doxing 2 other secret bases? Now there's 14? That they're still they're still operational? What? Why are they revealing this? I don't know. So That was the that was the article. Um, I'm sure none of the information there was sensitive or will put anyone in danger or will contribute at all to Russia's narrative. So I don't know. I'm gonna guess that that was a snake eating of some description. Some days it's really hard in this whole conflict to know who exactly is snaking who, but that was a lot of dirty laundry. That was a lot of stuff that we'd long suspected, and now it's confirmed. I don't really know how we can say that, like, unless the narrative is going to be that the New York Times is like pro-Russian propaganda, which I'm sure is what's going to come out. I'm sure that's going to be the next narrative, but I don't know, man. That's just crazy to me. Um, all this stuff that's come out and how like basically Putin was right about everything is more or less what they're saying. So yeah, that's today's program. Um, that is today's program. So God bless everybody. I hope you have a good weekend. I'm going to go see Dune tomorrow, so look forward to a review of that. Maybe a stream as well.